£36,000 wiped out in 12 months. Not a foreclosure scam. Not a structural nightmare. A real, massive property market collapse across 10 premium UK commuter hubs, and the land registry data confirms it's happening right now. While mainstream buyers compete for overpriced scraps, smart money is quietly tracking a catastrophic southern transit hub losing millions and a historically rich tourist haven where desperate sellers are slashing prices by 9% just to escape negative equity. Most estate agents are actively trying to bury these numbers because once this information spreads, their margins are entirely ruined. Choosing the wrong postcode right now will cost you 10 years of savings, while knowing these locations gives you immediate, unfair leverage to lowball your way into a home. Hit subscribe because choosing wrong here costs thousands, and your future self will thank you for escaping the trap. Let's break it down. Number 1. Crawley, West Sussex. Crawley has cheap post-war terrace houses and an absolute black hole of architectural despair. Same zip code. Make it make sense. Deep in the green rolling hills of West Sussex, Crawley is a major London commuter hub with a population of 118,000. On the surface, it's a perfectly functional town built right next door to Gatwick Airport. It's convenient, busy, and wildly uninspiring. Let's break it down. Median home prices crashed -8.9% down to £372,202 over the last year. That's a massive discount compared to London's ridiculous market. Average rent sits at £1,450 a month, meaning your cash actually buys breathing room. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. Crime rates are noticeably high around the city centre nightlife zones. The job market is completely chained to Gatwick Airport. So when aviation struggles, the whole town economically tanks. As one Redditor brutally put it, living in Crawley means your entire life is permanently soundtracked by jet engines and your view is a depressing wall of grey 1950s concrete. So, what's the real trade-off? You'll save thousands on property, but you might spend your weekend suffocating in airport-adjacent gridlock or wondering if a town without a proper soul is worth a financial discount. And don't even get me started on parking. I swear, every street in Crawley is designed to aggressively fine you for existing. People will spend 45 minutes circling a single block just to avoid airport drop-off fees. Traffic laws here feel more like polite suggestions. Picture this. It's 11 p.m. on a foggy, damp autumn night. You step outside, smelling a thick mixture of damp earth and pure aviation fuel. You hear the deafening, low rumble of an incoming Boeing 777 shaking your window panes. Then you notice a corporate landlord's for sale sign swinging precariously in the wind. Welcome to Crawley. And if you think Crawley's drop is wild, the next place somehow made market crashes look like a competitive sport. Number 2. High Wycombe, Buckinghamshire. High Wycombe is a kind of town where premium, top-tier grammar schools and an absolute collapse of property equity exist on the same block. Tucked deep into a steep valley in Buckinghamshire, High Wycombe is home to roughly 125,000 residents who are slowly realizing the party is over. On the surface, it's a historic market town surrounded by the scenic Chiltern Hills. It's commuter-friendly, family-focused, and wildly frustrating to navigate. Let's break it down. Median home prices plunged by -7.4% down to £436,379 over the last 12 months. That's not a typo. That's literally £35,000 in equity vaporized into thin air. Average rent hovers around £1,550 a month, which is still painful, but your hard-earned cash stretches a bit further than it does in central London. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. The town centre high street is suffering from catastrophic retail vacancy rates, making it look a bit like a ghost town. Traffic congestion is a permanent nightmare because the town is built in a choke point valley. Plus, wealthier buyers are completely abandoning the area for prettier neighboring villages. As one Redditor brutally put it, the valley traps all the exhaust fumes and the town centre has lost its soul. Sellers are taking massive financial haircuts just to escape the gridlock. So, what's the actual price of moving here? You get a cheaper house near London, but you also get trapped in endless commuting misery. You'll save money on the purchase, but you might spend your mental health sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic on the A40. Okay, can we talk about the roads for a sec? The potholes here are large enough to have their own postcodes. I swear, Driving down the main road feels like you're riding a mechanical bull that's angry at your suspension. The council loves starting random roadworks that lead nowhere, turning a 5-minute trip to the supermarket into an hour-long odyssey. Picture this. It's 8:30 a.m. on a drizzly, gray Tuesday morning. You're trapped in a sea of brake lights, smelling stale coffee and diesel exhaust fumes. You look out the window through the fog and see a massive, empty department store building surrounded by aggressive pigeons. Then you check your phone and realize your house just lost another 10 quid in value while you were sitting there. Welcome to High Wycombe. Remember Crawley's aviation noise problem? High Wycombe said, "Hold my regional ale," and traded jet engine for pure, unadulterated traffic gridlock. And if you thought High Wycombe's Valley of Despair was intense, the next place on our list is a historic Roman fortress city that is suddenly bleeding property value. Number 3. Chester, Cheshire. Chester is a kind of town where stunning 2,000-year-old Roman walls and a completely collapsing modern housing market exist on the same block. Sitting right on the border of England and Wales, Chester plays host to roughly 80,000 residents. On the surface, it's a picture-perfect historic postcard come to life, complete with black and white Tudor buildings. It's charming, highly cultural, and wildly overpriced for what it actually delivers. Let's break it down. Median home prices here dropped by -6.4%, bringing the average down to £340,415. Average rent sits at about £1,100 a month. Cost of living is actually 2% lower than the national average, meaning your money does go a bit further here. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. Holiday-let platforms like Airbnb have totally saturated the market, triggering a massive local backlash and forcing angry landlords into desperate fire sales. Maintenance costs are an absolute nightmare due to strict historical preservation laws, and the local workforce is facing a major commuter drain as hybrid jobs vanish. As one Redditor brutally put it, sellers are finally realizing you can't pay a 6% mortgage with historic charm. The crushing tourist crowds make living in the actual center an absolute chore anyway. So, what's the real trade-off? You get beautiful architecture, but you also get zero peace and quiet. You will save money on the upfront cost of the house, but you might spend your savings trying to get a damp, Grade II listed Victorian wall insulated without getting arrested by the council. Let's talk about the stores for a second. The historic City Roads used to be full of quirky independent boutiques, but now it feels like a copy-paste selection of generic chain coffee shops and vape emporiums. Why does every single beautiful old building need to be turned into a place that sells 5-pound oat milk lattes? Remember High Wycombe's traffic choke points? Chester managed to escape the vehicle gridlock only to replace it with a permanent pedestrian jam of slow-moving tourists blocking your front door. And if you think Chester's historic market correction is wild, the next town on our list is an ultra-affluent West Midlands playground where wealthy owners are facing a massive reality check. Hit subscribe because this is exactly the kind of data estate agents try to hide to protect their crumbling margins. Knowledge is your only leverage. Number 4. Solihull, West Midlands. Solihull is the kind of town where manicured multimillionaire playgrounds and sudden, desperate property price slashes exist on the same block. Perched right on the affluent edge of the West Midlands, Solihull houses a stable population of 215,000 residents. On the surface, it's a leafy suburban paradise consistently voted one of the best places to live in the UK. It's manicured, heavily gentrified, and wildly full of itself. Let's break it down. Median home prices took a hit, dropping -6.2% down to £390,292 over the last year. Average rent hovers around £1,300 a month, while the local cost of living sits a painful 8% above the national average. Translation: your money doesn't buy luxury here anymore. It buys a reality check. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. There's a massive oversupply of overly expensive, detached executive homes that absolutely no one can afford to mortgage at current interest rates. Localized anxiety over industrial manufacturing shifts is chilling the job market, and the council tax rates are sky high for diminishing public services. As one Redditor brutally put it, everyone here acts like they live in a royal postcode, but reality is biting hard. Houses are rotting on Rightmove for 6 months until sellers panic and chop £40,000 off the price. So, what's the actual trade-off? You get pristine suburban streets, but you also get a massive layer of keeping up with the Joneses' financial anxiety. You will save a bit on the property purchase, but you might spend your evenings worrying if the local economy is sturdier than a house of cards. And don't even get me started on the drivers. I swear, every second vehicle is an oversized luxury SUV that has never seen a speck of date. People will block entire school runs and narrow roundabouts completely oblivious to the world, driving like they personally own the tarmac. Traffic laws here are treated like gentle suggestions for the lower classes. Number 5. Worcester, Worcestershire. Worcester is a kind of town where famous cathedral spires and a terrifyingly precarious relationship with the River Severn exist on the same block. Nestled right in the heart of the West Midlands, Worcester is home to 102,000 residents living on a slow-growth treadmill. On the surface, it's a quintessential English gem, famous for its namesake source and breathtaking cathedral views. It's historic, undeniably charming, and wildly allergic to dry weather. Let's break it down. Median home prices dropped by -6.1%, falling to £331,977. Rent is surprisingly manageable at £950 a month, and the cost of living sits 4% below the national average. Translation: your paycheck actually does a bit of heavy lifting here. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. The River Severn is a fickle beast. Massive seasonal flooding renders huge chunks of the local housing market completely uninsurable. High-paying corporate jobs are essentially non-existent, leaving most residents dependent on long-distance commuting. Infrastructure links between the city centre and the outer estates are, to put it politely, an absolute joke. As one Redditor brutally put it, good luck getting a mortgage approval if your postcode is even remotely near the river. Sellers are slashing prices because buyers can't even get the bank to look at these properties. So, what's the real trade-off? You get incredible history, but you also get a massive side order of seasonal anxiety. You'll save on the mortgage, but you might spend every winter night staring at the river levels on a government website, praying your garage doesn't turn into an indoor swimming pool. Can we talk about the weather for a sec? It feels like it rains in Worcester for 360 days a year. I swear, the local hobby isn't sightseeing. It's comparing waterproof boots and checking for damp spots on your ceiling. And don't get me started on the drainage. It's like the town's entire underground system was designed by someone who'd never actually seen a rain cloud. Number 6. Cardiff, Wales. Cardiff is a kind of town where world-class capital city culture and a completely collapsing urban property market exist on the same block. Perched right on the coast of South Wales, the Welsh capital houses a rapidly growing population of 362,000 residents. On the surface, it's a vibrant, thriving metropolis packed with modern stadiums, historic castles, and a stunning waterfront bay. It's energetic, highly cultured, and wildly unstable behind the scenes. Let's break it down. Median home prices here took a sharp -5.2% plunge, bringing averages down to £310,577. Average rent hovers around £1,200 a month, while the overall cost of living sits a comfortable 5% below the national average. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. A massive oversaturation of cheap city center apartment blocks is dragging down overall property values across the board. Stringent new localized landlord regulations have caused an absolute stampede of buy-to-let investors dumping their portfolios onto the market simultaneously. As one Redditor brutally put it, the new Welsh rental laws made me sell up my properties instantly. I practically gave my houses away just to escape the administrative nightmare. So, what's the actual price of moving here? You get a cheaper capital city lifestyle, but you also get trapped in a hyper-volatile market. You'll save money on the purchase, but you might spend your evenings watching your neighborhood turn into a revolving door of transient student housing. Okay, can we talk about the Wi-Fi for a sec? If you live in one of Cardiff's historic terrace suburbs, the internet speeds are an absolute joke. I swear, the broadband infrastructure here feels like it's being powered by a hamster on a wheel. Trying to load a simple video feels like a test of human endurance, and don't even get me started on the random dropouts during peak hours. Number 7. Cheltenham, Gloucestershire. Cheltenham is a kind of town where stunning high-society Regency terraces and an absolute multi-thousand-pound collapse of property value exist on the same block. Perched right on the picturesque edge of the Cotswolds, this historic spa town is home to a stable population of 116,000 people. On the surface, it's an ultra-exclusive enclave famous for literary festivals, leafy avenues, and wealthy horse racing crowds. It's highly cultured, undeniably beautiful, and wildly expensive. Let's break it down. While the historic core looks pristine, actual property premiums across the town's broader market took a sharp minus 5.0% hit over the last 12 months, bringing median home values down to £411,593. Average rent sits at a stiff £1,400 a month, and the local cost of living sits a brutal 10% above the national average. Translation: you're paying a massive premium just to breathe the same air as a Cotswold influencer. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. Buying a flat inside one of those stunning historic buildings means dealing with astronomical service charges and ground rents that will make your eyes bleed. Trying to modernize or fix a basic insulation problem is a legal nightmare due to strict Grade II listing protections. On top of that, the local economy is heavily dependent on a few specific institutions like GCHQ and seasonal tourist events, meaning high-paying private sector jobs are surprisingly hard to come by. As one Redditor brutally put it, "I looked at a flat here, but the shared structural repair bill for the crumbling stucco facade was going to be £15,000 per resident. I backed out of the sale instantly." So, what's the actual price of moving here? You get gorgeous architecture, but you also inherit massive hidden maintenance liabilities. You will save a bit on the purchase price right now, but you might spend your savings keeping a 200-year-old drafty window from freezing you out in January. Number 8, Brighton and Hove, East Sussex. Welcome to London by the Sea, where the only thing dropping faster than the pebbles on the beach is the value of a 2-bedroom basement flat. Brighton is the ultimate lifestyle destination, a vibrant, progressive coastal city of 277,000 people defined by its iconic pier, winding stone lanes, and massive LGBTQ+ community. For decades, priced-out Londoners fled here for sea air and a shorter commute, turning Brighton into one of the most expensive markets in the UK. But in 2026, the music has officially stopped. The latest land registry numbers show a clear minus 2.0% annual drop in overall property values, dragging the average postcode price down to £416,000. But if you look closer, the real bloodbath is in the flats and maisonettes market, which tanked by minus 3.2%, dropping to an average of £295,000. Meanwhile, average private rents have hit an astronomical £1,816 a month, leaving local wages completely marooned. The price-to-earnings ratio stands at a crushing 10.8, meaning you need nearly 11 years of an average local salary just to buy a roof over your head. The math is simple. People are finally refusing to pay London prices for a city where it rains sideways 6 months a year. Here is the reality of the Brighton premium. Buyers who flooded the city during the remote work boom are realizing that Victorian conversions near the seafront are absolute money pits. Sea, salt, and coastal gales batter the brickwork. Damp is an eternal battle, and water ingress is practically a local resident. Because so much of Brighton's housing stock consists of historic subdivided townhouses, leaseholders are getting hammered with soaring maintenance costs just to stop the ocean from reclaiming their living rooms. Worse still, the local economy doesn't have the corporate weight to support these property values. Outside of American Express and the universities, Brighton's job market is heavily reliant on tourism, hospitality, and creative freelancing. When the cost of living bites, a city built on £6 oat milk lattes and boutique shopping is the first to feel the squeeze. As a local agent recently admitted on a property forum, sellers are still listing flats with 2022 expectations, but buyers have completely dried up. If a place doesn't have outdoor space or a share of the freehold, it's sitting on the market for 6 months until the owner panics and cuts £25,000 off the price. Number 9. Barnsley, South Yorkshire. Barnsley is a kind of town where dirt cheap northern living and an absolute aggressive pounding of property values exists on the same block. Located right in the industrial heart of South Yorkshire, Barnsley houses a growing population of 245,000 residents. On the surface, it's a traditional market town surrounded by rugged Yorkshire countryside. It's gritty, undeniably friendly, and historically built on coal and community spirit. Let's break it down. Median home prices here took a sharp minus 4.7% drop, dragging the average down to a remarkably low £215,552. Average rent sits at a very modest £750 a month, while the local cost of living is a massive 14% lower than the national average. Translation: your paycheck actually lets you live like a king on paper. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. Massive housing developers have completely overbuilt the town's fringes, throwing up thousands of generic, copy-paste new-build estates. This sudden explosion of supply has completely outpaced local demand. Compounding the issue, a sudden contraction in major regional distribution and logistics center jobs has chilled local employment, and public transport links to nearby Sheffield or Leeds are frustratingly slow. As one Redditor brutally put it, developers threw up an absolute sea of plastic-looking new builds over the last 5 years. Now they're aggressively cutting prices just to shift their unsold inventory before the fiscal year ends. So, what's the actual trade-off? You get incredibly cheap square footage, but you also inherit an absolute lack of localized economic momentum. You'll save a fortune on your monthly mortgage, but you might spend your evening staring at a view of identical gray rooftops wondering if your property will ever see a penny of capital growth. Number 10. Stockport, Greater Manchester. Stockport is a kind of town where hyper-trendy gentrification vibes and a sudden, brutal property market reality check exist on the same block. Perched directly south of Manchester, this massive satellite hub houses a growing population of 295,000 people. On the surface, it's a booming hotspot recently crowned as one of the coolest places to live in the UK, famous for its historic marketplace, independent food festivals, and towering Victorian viaduct. It's artsy, incredibly hyped, and wildly vulnerable to economic gravity. Let's break it down. Despite all the glowing media coverage, median home prices took a sharp minus 4.7% market correction over the past year, dragging the average down to £330,654. Average rent has climbed to £1,150 a month, matching the local cost of living, which now sits 1% above the national average. Translation: the Manchester spillover effect has officially hit a hard financial ceiling. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's what nobody tells you. Speculative buyers and amateur property flippers completely bloated the market beyond what local wages can actually support. The town center has been turned into a chaotic, unnavigable construction zone due to endless, multi-million-pound redevelopment projects. Plus, a massive premium was slapped onto the town's period terraces, which buyers are now realizing require tens of thousands of pounds in urgent energy efficiency retrofits. As one Redditor brutally put it, people tried to price gouge this town like it was trendy East London. The reality is that local families simply cannot afford £250,000 for a standard red brick terrace. So, what's the actual price of moving here? You get to live in the region's top up-and-coming cultural hub, but you also buy at the absolute peak of a gentrification hype cycle. You'll save money compared to buying a flat in central Manchester, but you might spend your savings fixing a Victorian roof while your car gets stuck in town centre construction gridlock. And don't even get me started on the roads. Navigating the M60 motorway junction during rush hour is a primal test of human sanity. I swear, the slip roads were designed by someone who actively hated motor vehicles. Traffic merges from 3 different directions simultaneously while everyone is aggressively fighting to get home, turning a simple commute into a daily near-death experience.